Hello, I'm Regina Botras, and this is Backstage, where we talk with the who's who on stage, in dance, comedy and performing arts, speaking with the leading theatre makers of our times and how they came to the stage and what drives them and inspires them. I'm joined by Zindzi Okenyo. She's directing The Purpose, which is Sydney Theatre Company's first show for the year. It has just opened and it is a beautiful production. It's down at Wharf 1 and it was the most awarded American play of 2025 with a Tony Award for the Best Play and Pulitzer Prize for Drama and New York Critics Circle Award. And Zindzi is the director of this production. She is... oh, gosh, she's an actor and director and musician and presenter. She's done so many productions around town, from Bell Shakespeare to MTC Ensemble, Belvoir Sydney Festival, and so many more. So she's bringing her skills as a director to talk with us this evening. Welcome, Zindzi.
Oh, it's so lovely to chat with you.
Thanks for coming on. This is just like, as I said, it's so beautifully written. And do you want to set the scene?
Yeah, so the piece is about a Black dynastic family, loosely based on the Jesse Jackson and his family, bringing kind of to mind the Obamas, these regal legacy families with, who've done so much for the civil rights movement, so much for the movement in America and then globally, but it's centering around this family, the Jaspers, who it takes place the day that Solomon Jr., so there's Solomon the father and then Solomon Jr., he's come home after being in prison for 2 years for embezzling campaign funds. So he's a bit of a stain on the family legacy. And all secrets, dark secrets, things that they would prefer not to talk about, come to the fore when the family's snowed in for the weekend.
Yeah, for the mother's birthday, which has been changed to suit everyone for his arrival back. And there is a lot of that kind of, I guess it's the personal and the political and the hierarchy and the power like dynamics within a family. I guess, yes, status and image and legacy and all of those sort of big words. And I guess it's a story we don't necessarily always think about. If we think about a Black American play, we want to kind of, be maybe the earlier on the street and the fighting and the protesting. How did you come to this play to be directing it? And what sort of choices did you need to make straight up?
Yeah, so I've always really loved the writer Brandon Jacobs Jenkins' writing. I read it, and really complex and dense piece of writing, as well as being really entertaining, and it really requires a lot for everybody involved. And so I guess first point of call was to find actors that were really capable of being able to inhabit these really complex human beings.
And also, was it difficult to find actors? I mean, we're talking Black American and you can put an accent on, but how was the casting process?
Yeah, it was difficult, and not for lack of people. There are so many extraordinary Black actors in our country, Black American, but also African Australian. There's a big pool, which is fantastic. But there is a systematic racist gap in casting. I came up as the only Black person in the room. I'm 40 now. I've been in the industry for 20 years. So I have a really great skill level and craft when it comes to theatre. And this piece would be even challenging for me. And so it's really requiring kind of veteran actors to take on board this. It was really difficult to find, one, the people with the right essence, but also people who, even if they hadn't had the experience, were, had the work ethic to be able to take on board a lot. Because, for example, Maurice Meredith, who plays Junior, it's a very complex emotional role and demanding. And then Sisi Stringer, who plays Aziza, this is their first production in theatre. I think Sisi had done some stuff back in the day at drama school, but Maurice had never done a play before. They've done some amazing screen work. But, it's a whole ball game. So I needed to find people who were kind of ready and willing to jump in with the rigor and the demand of doing 8 shows a week. because it's just a skill that you have to learn. And so everybody was amazing. Everybody was incredible at jumping on board, because I had to be kind of quite tough and rigorous in order to get us to the place that it needed to be.
So do you when you say essence, do you mean that kind of muscle, that kind of the power to carry that constantly every night, or is there something else that is essence in the characters themselves?
Yeah, I mean essence in the characters and essence in the people. So, for example, there's a character, Aziza, who is a friend of the Jasper's younger son, and she finds herself just by chance. She comes to drop a phone charger off, and she finds herself by chance staying and has to witness all of this terrible behavior from the family. And that character really needed to be somebody who had a completely different energy to the Jasper family. So the Jasper family are quite conservative, very formal, repressed because they're holding so many family secrets, all of those things. And so I needed to find somebody who played Aziza that had this kind of really vibrant, free, bold, queer energy. And and that was Sisi Stringer. And so, so I'm looking for people who are kind of innately. It's an interesting thing with casting, an interesting thing with actors. Like, each actor has, I suppose, a vibe and an essence. And it's about, you'll pick the person who's like right for the role in terms of that essence, but also, has the technical prowess, or that rigor, or that approach. For me, that's what's important to me when I'm building a room, and people who are really respectful as well. Because once you cast a room like that, it means that the room has that energy. If you cast somebody who is opposite to that energy will suck away, I guess, goodness. So I don't work with any dickheads. And that's a policy.
That's on the, do not audition in this case. if you tick that role.
Yeah, exactly.
This play itself, it's quite, has those contrasts, and I guess tensions, I suppose, but they are quite a conservative family. You say that for being a very liberal and kind of activist family, right? But do you want to just sort of take us into that world of the complexity of the family?
So Solomon, the family really revolves around Solomon Jasper, played beautifully by Markus Hamilton, who people might have seen in Fences,
yes.
and recently Happy Days at STC. So if you imagine that Solomon Jasper is like a Martin Luther King, so he's a fictional character, but they set him up, and then these names are mentioned in the play, that he was often spending time with Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, all of these civil rights leaders who and so those were his peers. So then we can imagine that he was right there beside them, leading the way, 60s, 70s, leading the revolution. And so, I guess what comes with that, you see it in the Obamas also, both in Michelle and Barack, is that if there's a Black person that rises to that level of success and level of leadership, that they've had to sacrifice parts of their own self and parts of their own Blackness. So that was a critique of Obama, was that, from Black community even, who weren't happy with him, is the critique that, you've assimilated, right? So it's kind of like you can't win, but there's no version, certainly not right now in 2026, but, there's been one Black president, and there's no version where somebody who is, if I'm being explicit, dark-skinned, really, from Africa, really, an accent, etc. He was Harvard educated, all of these things that are extraordinary. But in pursuing that, there's a real deep level, a cellular level of repression, and that's just what it takes to. That's what it takes to kind of succeed and to get to that point. So the Jasper's repression is different to if you were watching this kind of political family that were a white Eurocentric family. Theirs is about holding the pressure, and still having to be excellent. And unfortunately, in the case of the Jaspers, passing on, um, I guess, generational trauma of control and actually lack of freedom for their children and more pressure on their children. Um, and I think that it's really incredible that Brandon wrote a piece like this because we haven't actually seen, and I read that he was interested in this particularly, we haven't actually seen, um, we haven't seen a black family portrayed in this way. And what's interesting about it is because you have the father and then you've got the sons, you are seeing those generational gaps and also misogyny in the way that women, there are three women in the play, and they're certainly not just functions, but they function in the piece as, what black women have to bear to look after and keep alive black men and their self-esteem because of the pressures that I mentioned. So it's really complex and, obviously very specific, and I'm sure moving for black community, but it's also family dynamics, and I think speaks to anybody that's in a family, therefore everybody.
Absolutely. And it speaks to also to that that thing where, the compromises that are made, and that there's this sort of, we can take it for granted that the change has happened and now we don't need to do anything anymore. We can just sit and enjoy this change, whereas there's this sort of need to continually, keep fighting. I don't know, keep present with that, with change. I thought, and I felt the writing. I mean, it was really interesting to have Naz is the son, the brother, the youngest, I think, returning from university. In the writing, there's a lot of direct to the audience, which I don't think is necessarily an easy thing to do. Do you want to talk about that kind of, I guess, role in the writing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I first read it, I was like, whoa, what is this? Why is this here? I didn't quite understand the form. So if you can imagine, if you're reading it, it's pages and pages of monologue, like full pages. And, on first glance, he seems just like a narrator. But the more that you delve into it, and we found, I won't spoil, but at the end of the piece, he has these questions, and we realized that, because it's in past tense, he's speaking to the audience, and he's trying to figure something out. He's trying to figure what happened this last weekend, and what choices were made, and what did I miss that pertains to these questions at the end of the play. And so it was a really interesting thing working with the incredible Tinashe Mangwana, who some people might have seen. He was also in Sweat. He's a relatively new actor. This is his second main stage piece, and he's just like the best person to work with. So gorgeous and so talented. I think he's off stage for about a minute in a 3-hour play, and he's just amazing. And so this direct address is very much, I guess the feeling is that he is speaking to the audience. He's bringing them into this story, this the recent events of last weekend. Hey, come along, I'll show you what happened. But he's on a quest. And I think that was a really interesting thing to play, as opposed to just being a narrator. He's on a quest for something. And when I spoke to Brandon Jacobs-Jenkins over Zoom, he said something really interesting, which was that he thinks that Nazareth, this character, is a mystic. And I thought that's really fascinating, because a mystic is somebody who can commune with God or commune with the beauty of God or nature, who's kind of a conduit. And that was just such a great insight, because it's so much more interesting than thinking about it like direct address or, talking to the audience or a narrator. It just suddenly became spiritual and something deeper, which was really fun to explore and play.
For you as a director, were there challenging parts? I mean, it's durational and generational, even though, we are in the one evening. But as I say, beautifully written and beautifully staged. I mean, what a gorgeous set to see this family. What challenges did you find in directing?
I did find it challenging. I think it was challenging for everybody. I mean, not a bad challenge, but I think it was, it's pretty standard. We had 4 weeks to make it, so it's just really crazy. I think every director will say this, but when you've got a piece even of that length, 4 weeks to a cast of six, and different forms, so it was like making sure that everybody had enough time to delve into the complexities. Got people of different experiences and ages and backgrounds, so there were quite a few things to manage within that. The biggest challenge was getting everybody to remain consistent. I think because the work was so demanding that we'd often have excuse me, we'd often have breakthroughs, and then that would be so much information to take in, and then we'd kind of go backwards, and then we'd have a breakthrough and go backwards. And I was trying, as a director, I was trying to work out every day, what is the thing that I can say today that will get us to the next level? And that was really fascinating and challenging for me, but really good, because I constantly had to kind of corral the whole team, including creatives, everybody was working so hard. I had to just continually, as the leader, just make sure that we were always moving forward, because we didn't have the luxury of time. So, and preview week is really great for that, because you suddenly have the audience, you learn a lot from the audience, you learn what's working, what's not. Often you can think, this piece, it lives so much in the world of kind of sitcom, but also real tragedy, and that's what's in the writing. So I wanted to achieve that. You can't really know that until you hit previews. So we learned a lot in previews, but yeah, I would say it's just that sense of making sure we weren't going backwards. And I did personally find that really challenging, but I think every show that I do, I learn these big extraordinary lessons and take them on to the next one. And it's, I'm really glad for the challenges.
Yeah. Is there one thing that you can remember that was really made a difference in those, like, today, this is the thing we're focusing on?
I think it was probably just the day of opening. The previews had been up and down, and it was the day of opening, and I just thought to myself, what can I do today to set them up on the best path for opening night? And, usually you have a few hours every day during preview week where you can work with the actors or work on technical things. And I did a mix of work and a mix of work and like working some notes and working some scenes, but also just being together, and I think that's always the part of work, the process that I have working on Black work and with Black actors, because these plays are being put on within white companies, and there's a lot of, like, we started this conversation talking about pressure on people like Solomon Jasper, and I mean the pressure still remains, like the pressure for me to be excellent, the pressure for everybody in the cast, the pressure for the piece to be excellent, because we're in a place where there's not that many works being programmed or championed. And so, like, if this were to flop, then the next one flops, or the next one's mediocre, then people will start to go, I guess it kind of didn't work. Let's go back to what we usually did. And so there's an immense pressure. And so a lot of my work is making sure that everybody, self-esteem is in the right place. And obviously there's only so much I can do, but it's something that I take really seriously, and I really care about the team. So the day was a mixture of, sitting around and talking about who was coming to support us, who's coming to opening night tonight. People talked about their mothers and partners and agents and friends, and we just did some gentle work, and we were just, we were together. And and also probably that worked, because the day before I was pretty hard on them. Like every day was kind of something, and it's just a wild ride, I think. People don't understand just how much it, I guess I understand it because I am an actor, but it's really, it's a real hard and vulnerable place to be an actor. And I think because I know that, I always want to set the actors up in the best place that they can be. And part of that is understanding, you do have to, we talked a lot about, artists being risk takers. You have to jump in and go, see me, see my frailties, see my vulnerabilities. We're portraying people and the human experience. And so when you can do that as an actor, which I really feel like they all did, they all jumped in there. It's just an extraordinary thing to give an audience. So I really wanted them to get there. And yeah, opening night was really fantastic, and they're doing so great in the season. So I'm really proud of the whole team.
Oh, good. Well, Zindzi, it is beautiful. Thank you so much. And thanks for taking me in the inside of the days leading up to that wonderful night that I saw. Bravo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zindzi Okenyo there, directing The Purpose on at Sydney Theatre Company at the moment.